What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy, UnclefOOlio, and I'm back with another episode of the Kontroversy, ladies and gentlemen. As always, these episodes are sponsored by Nothing But Knicks. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Also, hit that notification bell whenever we go live for you for shoot-around videos, Queens Court videos, the NBA report, and all the coverage that we have for you as we cover this great offseason that the New York Knicks have. As always, Sim, Ron and John from Still Knick Fans, the Queen, Tony Crow from Knicks and Bruises, myself. We're going to have a lot of content for you this offseason as we break down and cover what the team is going to do going into next season. So I really appreciate everyone for watching this video today. I have a really, really special guest. A lot of people tell me they want to see me do more crossover shows, invite people from other shows and other networks to come on here so we can debate and discuss. Because as everyone knows, I'm very active on Twitter and I call out nonsense when I see it. So today's the guest that I have is the co-host of the Bad Weather Fans podcast, ladies and gentlemen. If you look in the description of this video, you'll get all the links to their content, the YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, where you can find their content. I've been going back and forth with this brother for a long time on Twitter, and I finally got him on, ladies and gentlemen. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you guys to the co-host of the Bad Weather Fans podcast, Mr. Alex B. What's going on, Alex? How you doing, my man? Welcome aboard.
What's up, Josh? How's it going? Long time. It's about time we were able to do this. We were playing DM tag for a long time. Then I had COVID, and then it was just a mess. So it's been a long time coming, but I'm happy to be on. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate you coming on. I know we've been going back and forth a lot in this offseason. When the team is not playing and now we're watching playoffs and, the Warriors and Celtics, they tip off tonight. A lot of Knicks fans kind of get antsy. We should be doing this. We should be doing that. And for the most part, I know me and you have disagreed on a lot of stuff. So I was like, there's no better way for us to do this, instead of getting you on here. Let's discuss some of these issues. I know a lot of people in the chat are going to have a lot of things to say. So I really appreciate you coming on. And ladies and gentlemen, again, if you go to the description of this video, I have all the links to their content on YouTube. He does a phenomenal job with Mike Biseglia, right? Both of those guys are hosts of the Bad Weather Fans podcast. One guy's a Knicks fan, which is Alex. Mike is the Net fan. They've had some really good guests. They just did a video with Chris Childs a couple weeks ago. Please check that out. Some dope stuff. And I like the back and forth that they do, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm really glad to have Alex on board with this show. Alex, anything you want to say about your show and what you and Mike are doing over there?
Well, Mike and I have the only Knicks and Nets podcast. Everybody has two Nets fans, two Knicks fans, two sports fans of one team, all everywhere. But we're the only Knicks and Nets podcast. We've had great guests on like Richard Jefferson, Kerry Kittles, Chris Childs, you mentioned. And, we talk all sports, but it all comes back to Knicks and Nets. We've had Jets writers like Connor Hughes on, but we talk about their Knicks fandom or their Nets fandom. We always bring it back to the core of the podcast, which is Knicks and Nets talk. So we generally talk everything. And, it's great that you got me here. We argue a lot on Twitter like everybody else. Everybody hates me. Everybody hates you. So it's a good way to get
Knicks
up on
Twitter is something else, man.
Yeah. Everybody always agrees on Twitter, though. I'm surprised. Besides us, We're the only ones at this.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's good. And we have a special guest coming up. Actually, he's scheduled to come. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. But we're gonna have Tracy McGrady on the podcast. We're recording tomorrow. It should be out by Monday or Tuesday. Bad Weather Fans, check us out. Knicks and Nets podcast. We're going to talk about Tracy McGrady's, time when he was with the Knicks for that half a season and that great first half that he had in his first game. And We're going to go into all the stuff about everything. Maybe talk about how we like playing for Jeff Van Gundy and things of that nature and whatever else comes up. So make sure you subscribe and so you don't miss that episode because that's going to be a great one.
Yeah, absolutely, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, look in the description box of this video. You'll see all the links to their content. Some great stuff. I've watched these guys for a long time. Kind of jealous in a way, that they're able to have such great chemistry on the content on their channels. Alex, I know you mentioned that right now the Knicks are not playing. There's a lot of good New York sports going around. You got the Rangers. They had a big game last night. They won game one of the Eastern Conference Finals pretty much handedly against the two-time defending champs in the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Yankees are doing well. The Mets are doing well. So it's a really good time in New York sports right now. And we're here to talk about the Knicks. You know what I'm saying? So how do you feel about, just quick thoughts on how do you feel about what's going on in the New York sports world in general? How do you feel about what's happening in the city right now?
Well, I don't really care about hockey, to be honest, but I'm very happy for the Rangers. My brother-in-law is a diehard Rangers fan, Matt. He goes to season tickets with his dad, so he's been going forever. So I'm really happy for them. So that makes me kind of root for them. I used to be a Rangers fan when I was a kid, and then I kind of just, you got to pick basketball or hockey. You can't be a diehard of both. They play at the same time. If anybody who says they are, they're lying. It's great that, New York sports is coming back a little bit with the Mets and the Yankees. Both have the two best records in baseball, or, 1, 2, 3, somewhere in there.
Right.
And it's just exciting finally to have him back. And, the Nets were supposed to be good, but of course they, pooped the bed. So, we're happy to see that. And, the Knicks, they can turn it around. I would hope, if they make the right moves this offseason, get rid of Randall. I was hoping they'd fire Tibbs, but they're not doing that. So we got to deal with Tibbs. So we just got to make the roster, good enough. I mean, not good enough to make the roster. How should I say this? Make the roster in a way where he has no choice but to play the players that he should be playing, and not be stubborn with guys like Alec Burks getting the most minutes in the NBA. Something stupid like that. Or playing him a shooting guard at point guard, things of that nature. I feel like I'm getting on your nerves already. So what did I do? What did I tell me?
No. I mean, we're gonna talk about this at length. We're gonna talk about this at length in regards to Tibbs and who Tibbs should be playing and why he chose to play the players that did. No. It's perfect. It's a perfect segue because we're gonna start it off. We're gonna pass the pleasantries a little bit, and we're gonna start off with the breaking news of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Literally within the past couple of hours, Ian Begley of the SNY tweeted out some breaking news to the New York Knicks with this tweet right here. The Knicks are finalizing a contract with Rick Brunson to become an assistant coach on Tom Thibodeau's staff. And Ian Begley tweeting this out. Now, obviously, the Knicks are currently in a chase to go after a point guard. Everyone knows that they're looking after Rick Brunson's son, Jalen Brunson of Dallas Mavericks. So this is some really, really important news, considering the Knicks, have lost a couple coaches due to college teams. Kenny Payne goes to Louisville. Mike Woodson goes back to his alma mater, Indiana. So the Knicks really needed a coach here. So this Rick Brunson news is very, very important. Just quick thoughts on how do you feel about this move? Do you think this move is a good move, first of all? And do you think that it is a sign for some things to come here within the next couple months before the season?
Well, if anybody is used to sitting on the Knicks bench, it's Rick Brunson. He was the number 1 12th guy that we had, white towel coming in, he was our guy. And he was on some great teams, and he was a big part of it on the bench. I joke about him being a bench warmer, which he was, but he was probably a coach in the locker room, which is why he stuck around. Guys like that stick around because they're such a big influence on the team, like Theo Pinson and things like that. So, I don't want to knock him there. I'm just joking around, but I feel like if they're bringing him in as a way to try to get Jalen Brunson, that's sort of pathetic. You know what I mean? It's kind of like when they brought in Royal Ivy to try to get Durant, you know what I mean? It's just try to sign the guy. And sometimes I don't know what their relationship is or other people's relationships with their father is, but I know damn well I'm not going to want to play for my dad. I love my dad and I talk to him all the time and we have a great relationship, but I want to be my own man. You know what I mean? I can be the man and be a multi-millionaire with my team in my own city. I don't want to have my parental supervision watching me all the time. You know what I mean? He's still my dad. Who the hell wants that? I mean, to be honest, that's just me personally. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what I feel about that. If he's there just to be an assistant coach, that's a good idea because he's been around the block and he's a good coach. But if he's there solely to get Jalen Brunson, who is not even on the level of, obviously a Kevin Durant or somebody, of that ilk all-star level, then, what are we doing?
Right. Right. I mean, listen, I slightly agree with you. I don't want to use the word pathetic. I don't think it's a pathetic move. I think it's a chess move, right? You go out and you get Rick Brunson. First of all, Rick Brunson has an extensive history with Thibodeau, with World Wide West, with Leon Rose. So this just isn't, I feel like it's not just a ploy for them to go out and get Jalen Brunson. I feel like it's a tool that they have in their tool belt, but I don't think that's solely what the reason why Rick Brunson is supported out as an assistant coach. As I mentioned, the Knicks lost 2 of their coaches, established coaches from the past 2 seasons, and Kenny Payne and Mike Woodson. And everyone has to realize that these coaches, particularly assistants, if a team is doing well, these assistants are not going to stick around for long. They're going to get head coaching jobs. They're going to leave, and they're going to move on. So I don't think it was just about getting Jalen Brunson. I think the Knicks really had a need on the coaching staff. Rick Brunson has been on some staffs. He's been with Tom Thibodeau in Minnesota, in Chicago, a really important part of his staff. And I think it was just kind of perfect timing to bring in Rick Brunson to be there, considering the Knicks needed to fill some coaching spots, also in the pursuit of Jalen Brunson. So I think it was an attempt to supplement their pursuit of Jalen Brunson. And listen, I think it's going to work out. I think that familiarity is going to work out between the two.
Okay, yeah, well, I hear you. But just my question for you is, then why didn't they bring him in 2 years ago? He was like coaching high school or something the last couple of years. Why wasn't he here originally then if he loved them so much?
Right, and that's a great question. And I feel like when Leon Rose hired Tom Thibodeau, I think the front office had a lot of say-so on who the assistant coaches were, right? Mike Woodson and Tom Thibodeau really don't have that much of a history, right? They don't have much of a history, right? I think Mike Woodson has a connection to the organization, considering the fact he was a former head coach here. I think Dolan had a lot to do with that signing. Kenny Payne, that's just something, with the Kentucky, that whole group that was that whole Kentucky contingent that the Knicks were trying to build up. So I think Tibbs didn't have a lot of say-so on his assistant coaches from the get-go. Not saying he didn't want those guys, so I think they did a phenomenal job while they were here, but I think the front office had a little bit more say-so on those coaches. Now, I think the staff, outside of Johnny Bryant, is all Tibbs guys. Yashimoto, Andy Greer or Green or Andy Greer, I forget his name, but I think these are Tibbs guys. And now you got a guy in Rick Brunson who's been around with Tibbs for years. Right, Tibbs loves that loyalty. Like, we talk about Taj Gibson all the time. Tibbs loves that. So I think that's the reason why it's like a perfect opportunity, like a perfect storm for Rick Brunson to come and join the staff. And I think it's going to work out. Obviously people in the comments, they're going to, post what they think. Guys, in the comments, please let us know what you think about this move. What do you think is behind this move? Do you think it's more about getting Jalen Brunson, or is it more about the Knicks needing someone on that staff, or a mix of both? Please let me know what you think in the comment section.
And I'd like to hear what people think about. I feel like this is a little backwards. You hire the coach, and when he's on the hot seat, then you give him his assistants. It's kind of backwards in a way. Leon Rose has been doing things a little strange. I support him still. Don't get me wrong, but not doing anything at the deadline really, really irked me. And not dumping like Alec Burks or something. Just dump somebody to get a pick and just open up a roster spot, something like that. I don't understand why you bring in assistant coaches to support the coach when the coach is probably on the hot seat. If they start off slow this year, he might be gone by the All-Star break, maybe before.
So you think Tom Thibodeau is on the hot seat?
100%. How do you go from 10 games over 500 to 8 games under and not be on the hot seat? That's a huge drop off, man.
You're absolutely right. But what about the roster that he had? What about the roster?
Yeah, but look what happened at the end of the season. You know what I mean? When he finally started playing some of the younger players that were playing better, it's not just like the usual that fans just want to see the kids. It was more like, these guys are playing better and are better. Why are you not playing them? And then they finally play them and they blow out whoever they blew out. And he's in a press conference scolding the fans that you need to watch tape in order to have an opinion. You know what I mean? So you do stuff like that. You start attacking the fans and you're mad after a win. And you keep Julius Randle in there when he's throwing the ball and pissed off after they win, but slapping five with people after they lose. It's just and you don't discipline the guy. And the second he sits down, Obi Toppin takes off the last 2 weeks of the season. Something there. How do you keep a coach that was 10 games over 500 and finishes 8 games under, or whatever it was exactly? I don't remember exactly if I'm wrong. So just how NBA coaches have been fired after going to the conference finals. Have been fired after being in the finals. And the Knicks are going to keep a guy that dropped off 18 games or so. And when most of the problems were his fault with the rotations, you know what I mean? The roster, Walker was a shell of himself. So that's not on him, but he benched him too early and then he refused to bench him later. There was just so many things like that over the season where you're just like, what are you doing? Like, you're trying to be the smartest man in the room when you need to just defer to your assistants. And maybe that's part of what we're talking about, that maybe he didn't trust his assistants and maybe now that will change. I'm trying to put a little positive spin on it. But at the end of the day, it didn't make any sense to me how you didn't let him go. I would have let him go at the All-Star break. So Alex,
I think you're all right. It is a results-oriented business, right? The wins, losses definitely do matter. But I disagree with you with everything else that you said. First of all, the Knicks lost a ton of games, at least 8 of them, when they were up by at least 15 to 20 points, right? Majority of those games, the Knicks were poor from the free throw line. They were absolutely poor. If you look at those numbers, they were last in the NBA in free throw shooting, right? Easily could have won any of those games. If the Knicks sneak into the playing spot, are we still talking about this? Thibodeau being on the hot seat? I don't think Thibodeau is on the hot seat. I think he got a lot of support from the front office to close out the season. Right, obviously Julius Randle regressed. Tibbs was a factor in it. I'm not gonna defend Tibbs, all around, because I do think he was a factor. I do not like the way our offenses ran. The Knicks, again, one of the worst offenses in the NBA for 2 seasons in a row, 3 seasons in a row, but I'm just counting the last 2 that Tibbs has been here. So the offense has been terrible. Defensively, we're somewhere around the middle of the pack to, near the top in the NBA in defense. So our defense is still there. But I think what Tibbs did as far as these kids is doing a great job for them as far as developing them for the future. I have no problem with a coach saying that you need to earn your spot. You need to earn your spot in the NBA. There's no reason why people think Deuce McBride would have came in and made a difference, and he would have been the reason why the Knicks would have won more games. Absolutely not. Maybe Alec Burks didn't deserve to be a point guard, but I think Tibbs felt that he was the best possible point guard that we had on the roster at the time. And I'm not knocking Tibbs for feeling that way. Alec Burks, proven veteran. He's knocked down some shots to help us win games in the past, right? Now, if you want to argue that the front office didn't put a competent point guard on the roster, that's a different topic. That's fair. As far as people thinking that the kids were going to save us this season, I just don't agree with that. Not at all, right? People 2 months before the season ended, everyone wanted to see IQ, his head on a stake. Everyone wanted IQ going because of his shot selection. Now IQ is going to be the point guard to lead us to the promised land. So I just don't agree with you in that aspect. Now, Tibbs is not completely absolved from how the team finished this season. He does bear some blame on it, but at the same time, I'm not blaming it all for him. I don't think he should be fired. I think, and not for not playing the kids. I don't believe that, because the kids did play, believe it or not. That is a thrown out narrative that just gets thrown out all the time. If I do have a problem with Tibbs as far as how his offense is ran and the numbers of our offense, the half-court offense is terrible, settling for terrible jump shots, don't have anyone that can really penetrate and get to the lane. But outside of that, I just disagree with you. I don't think Tibbs is an end-all, be-all for these teams' failures.
Okay, well, two-part question.
Mm-hmm.
The Knicks coming out in the third quarter flat literally almost every game, and that's not even an exaggeration, and probably the worst third-quarter team in the league, that's on the coach, correct? Yes or no?
I think it's a part of it. But you got a guy in Julius Randle who won Most Improved Player this year who just didn't perform this year. Didn't perform up to standards. You have guys like RJ Barrett, who everyone says Tibbs doesn't play the kids, but RJ Barrett did not start the season off this well. That well. So you got veterans on your roster that should be able to compete, that should be able to hold the fort over. I don't understand why it has to be all on the coach. At some point, you got to put some of the blame on the players.
Sure.
But to answer your question, yeah, I think part of it is on the coach. Absolutely.
Okay. So, and then why is he forcing guys like Taj Gibson in the rotation over guys like Jericho Sims, over guys like Mitchell Robinson, forcing these guys into the rotation? Guys, like just nonstop. Sims didn't start playing until the end of the season after the All-Star break, where it felt like there was a mandate from the executives to be like, dude, you better start playing these younger players or you're going to get out of here. Because out of nowhere, Sims, after the first game after the All-Star break, Sims is coming in the third quarter, or the first quarter, I'm sorry. And, it's crazy. And just overall, I forgot the point that I wanted to make also, but, he's forcing these rotations into the game, and it's really, really hurting okay, here's the point I want to say. How do you give him credit for Coach of the Year and what happened this season prior, but not give him any blame the year after? It's a wins and loss business. You said it. It's a results-based business. The results were shit. Sorry if I can't curse. The results were terrible. And they were way under the expectations.
But see, terrible is a strong word, though. I don't think the results were terrible. I just think our expectations.
Bad, man.
But hold on,
but 8 under, that's pretty bad.
But no, I don't think it's that bad, considering the fact that the Eastern Conference got better, right? The Knicks were in a lot of those games that they lost. They were winning by 15 points. Now, the inability to close, I think, is a roster issue. We don't have that guy. We don't have that closer on this team. Right? Yeah. We don't have that closer on this team. It's not RJ Barrett. It definitely, we have proven that it's not Julius Randle. So I think that's a part of it as well. Right? But I think the word terrible, and I think expectations matter. In the previous season, no one expected the Knicks to do anything. Right? I didn't have the Knicks making the playoffs, but they shocked everybody. Went on a run. They acquired Derrick Rose at the trade deadline, and they were able to will themselves into the playoffs, into the 4th seed. Now, I expected them to win that series, but they didn't perform well. But everyone was like, "Oh, I'm going to give them a nice standing ovation at the end of Game 5 at the Garden. I'm going to clap for them because no one expected this team." Me too. No one expected this team to do anything, right? So I think
punch in the mouth. You're going to cheer for that. You're going to cheer for getting punked by the Hawks.
Right. So we agree on that. We absolutely agree on that. But I think expectations matter, and I think this past season, I think the expectations were too high for this team. Right, everyone was rah-rah. They said the Knicks are going to repeat and get back to the 4th seed, which was not likely considering how good the Eastern Conference got. So if you want to take those expectations into consideration, I think you're right. But I think a lot of people's expectations were wrong, mine included. So I think that we just need to temper it. I think progress and development is not linear. Sometimes it's going to fluctuate. It's going to go up and down. But as far as the development of the kids and Tibbs not playing those kids, there's no way you're going to tell me that those kids, by playing Obi Toppin more minutes over Julius Randle, the Knicks were going to win more games. I just don't agree with that. I just don't agree with that. And not just that, but Tibbs did play the kids. There were a lot of kids that were playing in the rotation. RJ Barrett, Mitchell Robinson, two of our starters, kids under 24 years old. Obi got meaningful minutes.
20 minutes a game. Mitch played like 20 minutes a game. Like, he wouldn't play him more. And I know that's some of his fault that he would get in foul trouble and, nicked up sometimes. But, sorry to cut you off. But like, it's there. I don't know, man. I keep going back to the you can't tell me you going from the 4 seed to the 13 seed and you can't fire the coach and that's not a terrible season. You know what I mean? I keep going back to that. I don't understand that. And, I think going back to something else you said, I think RJ Barrett is a closer. I think he proved that in some of these games. I think he can be relied upon. I think Obi Toppin could have played better than Julius Randle, but Tibbs didn't want to see that because then he would look like an idiot for not disciplining Julius Randle, holding him accountable throughout the season. I'm not saying bench Julius Randle early in the season. I'm saying when he's cursing out an assistant coach and throwing a laptop in the guy's face, sit him down. How do you allow that to happen? But Obi Toppin has 1 turnover and you bench him for 2 games. That doesn't make any sense.
I think the way coaches can't treat everybody the same. Like, and I know that from when I coached football. I coached high school football in Brooklyn. Like, I know I couldn't treat my seniors the same way I treated my freshmen. There's a difference. I say this all the time, and I'm not making any excuses for this because I feel like every coach does this differently, right? But you lose Julius Randle and you lose some of the veterans in your locker room, you lose the locker room. Period.
But I thought the locker room was against Randle. Halfway about like a.
But that's not true. That's not what they were saying in press conferences. That's not the way they were acting on the court. They weren't acting that way on the floor.
Subliminal shots throughout the season in the press conferences. RJ really did, man.
I think all the RK stands were kind of hoping for that. A lot of people were creating this Julius versus RJ narrative because they wanted to see.
No. There was no beef like that.
Come on, Alex.
It was more of like, this guy, I don't have the clips and I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I remember there was a few where everybody was like, whoa, read between the lines there. Like about Julius Randle. This guy's chucking up, like he's stalling the offense. He's chucking up threes. His 3-point shot wasn't going down this year as it was the year prior. And it's just, that was a big problem. And to top it off, he was getting jealous of Obi Toppin chance, get the Obi Toppin chance.
Jealous? Really?
I really think so. Because, and honestly, I was defending Julius Randle. People who follow me at Nick Central on Twitter, that I was defending Julius Randle for most of the early parts of the season. I think fans turned on him too quickly. But by the time he's throwing laptops in assistants' faces, he's getting fans thrown out in Miami. You know what I mean? Things like that. Like, dude, you're sensitive, man. You can't handle it here. This is it. It's over. Like, you got to get out of here. You got to sit him down. And that's what I said. You got to sit him down right now. And people have told me crazy. And I'm like, no, it's over. Like, this is over. You got to get him out of here because you can't allow this guy to come here and do whatever he wants when he's Julius fucking Randle. This is not Kevin Durant. You know what I'm saying? You can't allow him to do whatever he wants. And then you're going to tell Obi Toppin that you're don't turn it over. RJ Barrett, you're going to discipline these guys. They're going to look at Tibbs like, who the fuck are you? The same thing happened with Elfrid Payton and Emmanuel Quickley. He was out playing Elfrid Payton the whole season. And then you keep Elfrid Payton in until you get into the playoffs. And that's when you change the rotation and then you throw everything off.
No. Don't get me wrong. The timing of that was off. The timing of that move was completely off. I totally agree with you. I went on. I made a whole video about that. The timing of that was completely off. But again, there's a fine line. Like all fans see on MSG and everything like that. That's all they see. They don't see everything behind the scenes, and they don't understand. As a coach, you have to make these decisions. Again, I'm not going to defend Julius Randle. Julius Randle did not have his best season. He still put up 20 and 10. No one wants to talk about that, but without Julius Randle, this team's offense was not that good. And you want to look at the last 5 games of the season to give you some praise. But when Julius Randle was out due to COVID, the team was not performing. They just didn't perform, right? So I just think there needs to be a fine line. I think a lot of times fans reach to hyperbole and go to the complete extreme, right? When talking about this kind of stuff, but they don't really see both sides of it, all right? I hear what you're saying, but I just think there needs to be a line that needs to be drawn. I think Julius Randle definitely needs to perform better. I think Tibbs needs to make better decisions, at the end of games. I totally agree with that. but there was multiple reasons why this team didn't perform to a level where you thought they should have performed at. A lot of it is free throw shooting. Are you going to blame the coach for their lack of free throw shooting? One of the worst free throw shooting teams in the NBA?
No,
Are you going to blame the coach for Julius Randle regressing? Are you going to blame the coach for RJ Barrett not having a good start to the season, right? And him not getting into the flow of the offense and him finally starting to take over, and become that dude? Are you going to blame the coach for that? So I just think, a lot of times the blame gets put too much out there. And I know we were talking about James Dolan on Twitter and who gets blamed and who gets, all that stuff. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. But I just think we need to kind of temper it down, look at stuff, objectively. I know a lot of people don't like Randle. I'm not the biggest Randle fan myself, but I do think, we had to look at it a little bit different, right? So,
I agree to disagree.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I don't know, but we'll figure out what happens. But I mean, that was, coming out of last season, we've seen the kids play a little bit more. We've seen them get some more minutes. We've seen IQ and Obi perform well together, right? Granted, at the end of the season, a lot of teams weren't playing all of their guys. And that gave us a little bit of hope going into this offseason. So coming into this offseason, what do you think the Knicks should do? How should they approach free agency? I know we spoke about Brunson a little bit earlier. How should they approach free agency and also the draft? What do you think will be the perfect storm for you as far as the Knicks offseason is concerned?
Resign Mitch. Resign Mitchell Robinson first and foremost. Extend him. You have nothing to lose by extending him. You sign him for 50 something whatever deal that you can give him, and then you have Sims under contract. Dump Noel if you can. If you can't, I understand. Get rid of Julius Randle, and just for literally anything, I don't care. And from then on, it's all gravy to me. With the draft pick at 11, this is a horrible draft. Like, it's probably one of the worst drafts to have a top pick in. And that's why there's so many trades on the table, because there's so many. This is such a bad draft. Teams aren't looking to trade players when you have a draft like the Zion draft. You know what I mean? There was no trading of like picks. That was more valuable than some of the stars on your team, because you didn't know who these guys were going to turn out to be. So you're not going to. I would trade up if you can. If you want to get Ivy, okay. I'm not the biggest Ivy fan. We lost to a bunch of guys from New Jersey tournament. You know what I mean? I know it's not a big deal, but you know what I'm saying? You lose a bunch of guys from Jersey City that they had a parade for when they won a couple games in the tournament. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a little concerning, kind of like, Ben Simmons and Markelle Fultz when they couldn't even make the tournament and everybody said it wasn't a big deal. But look at that now. You know what I'm saying? So it's something to be concerned about. I'm not going to put it all on him. You never know what happens, throughout the course of the game. Teams get hot and there's just momentum and it's crazy. It's basketball. It's one game, so whatever. If you can get Ivy somehow, sure. I don't know how you're going to do that. I don't know why the Kings would give up number 4 for Julius Randle when they have Sabonis. That's
right.
Rumored.
I don't understand why that's been put out there. I don't get that. Like, that doesn't make sense. Now, the only way I can kind of make that make sense is because the Kings are dumb. They're a dumb organization. They've been making dumb moves forever. Why would you trade for Julius Randle unless? And here's the only way I can see this happening. They trade for Randle because they want to dump Sabonis, but they traded Halliburton for Sabonis. So that just wouldn't make sense, but it's the Kings, so who knows? Yeah. But I totally agree with you.
No, and that's what doesn't make any sense to me. But you know what? What's going to happen is you look around the league, you're like, well, where's Randle going to go? Everybody does it, and I do it. Me and Mike do it on Bad Weather Fans. We look around the league. Where's the fit for Julius Randle? Where is it? You don't know. But what's going to happen, that always happens, he's not going to be the first domino to fall. Some trade is going to come that's going to open up a spot that another team now needs Julius Randle, or the Knicks going to get involved as like a third or fourth team, throw Randle in there for somebody else, give up, do something like that. And then it can happen. We always we always make mistakes. I do it too. Everybody does it. You look at the next year's, like, oh, how are we going to overtake the Bulls? How are we going to overtake this team? When 2 years ago, you look at the Bulls, you're like, yeah, okay. You know what I'm saying? So it's just year to year, teams get better, and that's why it's good to have a young team like the Knicks, because they're going to get better, or they can get better. They could get better. RJ Barrett is going to get better. Quickly works his ass off. He's going to get better. Mitchell Robinson, if they keep him, he's going to get better. So that's why you can take a step. Like, look at the Celtics right now. They're completely homegrown. I know they tried to go all in with Kyrie and Hayward that one time, but like for the most part, with Tatum, Brown, Smart, the Williams guys, you know what I mean? They're all drafted. You know what I mean? So you just keep developing and put talent around, and that's what I want. And that's what I wanted last year. I mean, they signed Fournier. I was kind of okay with it, but they didn't really do anything besides sign Kemba after he got bought out.
Right. The Kimba, listen, there's no doubt in my mind. I think the Kimba move wasn't the best signing. I was myself and Queen Steph of Dope Sober Sports Talk and the Queen's Court. She was very adamant about that. She didn't think it was a good signing, even though it was for the cheap, $8 million a season. His money's going to come off the books at the end of this year. I think he'll be going before that. I just don't think it was the right move to address the point guard position when you had the most money in free agency, over $60-something million. So if it's anything I can knock the front office for, I think it's not addressing that point guard position. Now, would you have paid Schroeder $20 million a season? I was definitely considering that. But because if not that, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You still don't have a point guard. And again, I mentioned this again. 2 months before the season was over, everyone didn't want IQ. They hated his shot selection. I think his shot selection is still bad. Now, he improved as a penetrator towards the end of the season, but there's still a lot of question marks there. Shot selection is a really, really big part. And I think one of the biggest reasons the Knicks failed to close games is because they didn't have that guy that can calm everything down, right? So I don't know if that guy's on this roster right now. We're all hopeful that Quickly's going to be that. I'm saying Quickly doesn't even have to be that. Quickly could be a microwave spark plug off the bench that we can use, and he can be a part of our young core moving forward off the bench. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. So that's where I'm at with Quickly and the starting point guard position. Let me just highlight some of these comments. Get in the comment section. Yeah. Once again, everyone, thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate this. I got my man Alex B from the Bad Weather Fans podcast. Again, go into the description of this video. You can get all the links to their content, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. However you podcast, these guys are on those platforms. So please go check them out. And also, Alex B, please follow him on Twitter at Nick Central if you're liking the content and liking what he has to say. Sonny STX says, yep, got to re-sign Mitch. All right. Nighthawk says, Tibbs can go. Bring Mark Jackson home and let's go. Yeah, I'm just not a fan of just going through coaches like that. It's only been 2 seasons. One of them really successful. You made a 4th seed. The other one, you regress and you're out of the playoffs. But I still think there's a lot of growth and a lot of positivity there. So I don't agree with that. I am Jarrell. Salute, my man. He says, first thing I disagree with Alex on, Mitch can go. We're going to talk about that in a second. The Public Enemy says, the Knicks as a team has awful defense. We have no elite defenders on the Knicks. Check the numbers. The Knicks are not that bad of a defensive team.
Did they ever get a big stop? Did they ever get a big stop?
No, but they never got a big bucket either. I think that was the biggest problem. How many times at the end of games? Yeah. How many times at the end of games we've seen the Knicks be in a real close game and they just settle for jump shots and not get into the lane or not get into the free throw line? And when they did get to the free throw line, we either missed 2 of them or made 1 out of 2. Right? That's happened. That's happened.
You know what would be great if the coach actually ran a play that can set up.
No. Listen, Alex, listen. You preaching to the choir on that. Offensively, the Knicks are not good. I blame that on the coach solely. There's nothing. We can agree on that part of it.
Okay.
Now, as far as the other stuff, playing the kids and not playing the kids, that part I don't agree with. Let me just get a couple more of these in here. Brandon said, Nick Central with the knowledge. Yeah, go follow my man. He has a lot to say. We disagree, but he definitely knows his stuff. Let's go. Pudge Knight says Tibbs has no playbook. Absolutely agree. If you want to fire the coach for that, I'm all for it. I'm all for that. I have no problem with that. Reek OMY says, as always, Knicks fans are overvaluing RJ. He is who he is. Are we going to wait 5 to 7 years to realize that RJ is not that player? And that's the way I feel about it. A lot of times, Knicks fans kind of overvalue RJ. I don't think RJ gets that respect around the league yet. He has not done anything. This was the first season where I've seen RJ Barrett step up and say, I'm going to take this over. I want to see more of that for an entire
He's 21 years old. He's 21 years old.
Okay. Yep, he's 21 years old. But there's a lot of young players around the NBA at 21 years old that turns up. And I feel like RJ Barrett has done a little bit of that, but I want to see that for an entire season. Give me a consistent season of RJ Barrett turning up, and then I'll agree with you.
20 points a game, dropped 47 on the Heat. You know what I'm saying? Get the game winner on the Celtics who were in the final. You know, I mean, he did his thing this year, man. He really did. He took a step, a major
consistency.
Step.
No, you're right. He definitely took the step. He definitely took it. Don't get me wrong. But I want to see consistency.
Right.
A whole season. Give me consistent.
Start from the beginning. Yep.
Salute to the co-host of Bad Weather Fans, Michael Segler. He's in the chat. He says, we agree on RJ. I don't know if he's talking about me or talking about you.
He's talking about you.
I think he's talking about me.
About how I call RJ Barrett a star, and he doesn't agree. We have, there's one episode, I think it was 115. I don't remember where.
A star, Alex?
Where we were yelling at each other, screaming at each other. You guys will like that one. Yes, I do. And with time, he was crushing it. And I still think he's a star. He's going to come out next year. He's going to be a borderline all-star, if not an all-star, and he's going to keep going. He just has that kind of desire. He has that kind of drive. He's winning in spite of Tibbs.
Yeah, okay. Oh, now Tibbs doesn't get any credit for that, right?
No,
You
he
see what
gets.
I'm
I'm
saying?
teasing. I was laughing.
Okay.
He gets credit for that. No, he gets credit. I got to be fair. Tibbs gets credit for sure.
And one last comment I'll just talk about is Harlem Girl. She says everyone develops differently. John, stop hating on RJ. I'm not hating on RJ. I'm just calling it like I see it. I think Mike Baseglia is calling it like he sees it as well. RJ Barrett has not shown enough for me. Are you paying him a max contract? Let's get that out the way. Are you going to give him a max contract?
Yes, the rookie max. Yeah. Because I'm paying for what he's going to become, not for what he is right now. That's the same thing with Mitch. You don't pay young guys who are 20, 21 years old, who have shown progress and grown up and they look like they can take a step. You don't pay them. You don't let them go. That's what happens with Marcus Camby. That's what happens with guys like that who you see them develop on other teams and win championships on other teams that were on the Knicks. You know what I'm saying? You got to keep your guys at some point. There's a reason why they have been so bad for so long, besides a few years with Melo and 2 years ago, because they don't keep their own guys. They haven't re-signed a rookie first-round pick since Charlie freaking Ward, man.
Would you have given Kevin Knox that money?
Why they stink.
What about Kevin Knox? What about Franklin Lakina, other first-round picks?
They stunk. But guess what? These guys have shown a pulse. Those guys didn't show a pulse, so you kick them to the curb. They stunk.
Okay, but Kevin Knox showed a pulse in his rookie season. He showed some type of promise.
Who is this?
Right?
I'm sorry.
Kevin Knox. Kevin Knox showed some type of promise initially.
He showed something, right? And he dunked on Ben Simmons. I mean, he had a couple nice moments, but overall he was inconsistent and couldn't crack the rotation over Bobby Portis. And then we let Bobby Portis go, and he's winning titles with the Bucks. Like, you're right. What are we doing here?
You're right. But here's what I will say about that, right? I understand that Knicks fans are worried about, you got to sign your own guys. I totally agree with you, but you have to have the right guys, and you also have to draft well. You compare the Knicks to the Boston Celtics. The Knicks are not the Boston Celtics. I'm sorry to tell you. You know why? The Knicks don't have a Jason Tatum. They don't have a guy like that was coming out the gate getting buckets. Huh?
The Boston Celtics weren't the Boston Celtics 7 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So
no. But when Jason Tatum first came out, everyone knew Jason Tatum was a problem. There was no question about that. He was going to knock some shots down. He was dunking on guys. His numbers aside, because numbers are numbers. But I'm talking about from the eye test. You knew who the hell Jason Tatum was, and now it's all paying off now. So I can only hope. Listen, I'm rooting for RJ because we're gonna need RJ. In order for us to advance and to move forward. If RJ turns out to be that player, I'm all for it. Now, can I honestly say right now I'm going to give him $36 million a season right now? Hell no. No way. I'm not giving RJ Barrett $36 million a season.
What are you going to do? You're going to let him go? You're going to let him go?
No, I'm going to negotiate a lower contract for him. And if it comes out that he can make $25 million, I think that's his ceiling, at least from what I've seen, $25 million a season. That's what I think RJ Barrett is worth, and I will pay him that. Gladly, no problem, based off potential. But $36 million, that is 1/3 of your cap.
What are you saving the money for? Who are you signing? What are you saving?
It's not about saving the money to sign someone. It's about making sure when the time comes and the time is right, you're able to sign people. I'm not going to give 1/3 of my cap to RJ Barrett. I don't feel RJ Barrett is that guy right now.
Who's the guy that you're signing in a couple of years? That you're saving?
I can't predict who's going to be available, who's going to be disgruntled in a couple of years. But what I will say, I'm going to put myself in a position where I can go out and sign other guys. Right now, I can't guarantee RJ Barrett's that guy. I'm not going to sign him. There's no guarantee I'm going to do that. RJ Barrett's shooting numbers are terrible. They're horrible.
I'm willing to bet more on RJ Barrett becoming a star than I am willing to bet on the Knicks signing a free agent in a couple of years.
That's a good bet. That's a good bet. That's a good bet.
That's why I'm paying the guy. That's why I'm keeping him. He's our guy. He's a fan favorite. He wants to be here. He grew up a Knicks fan. His dad went to St. John's. Keep this guy. This guy is developing into a star, and he's our guy. Like, just keep him. And even if he doesn't become a superstar or a major star, he can be that guy that can average 15, 20 points a game as our 2 or 3 guard, 2 or 3, and just.
And I'm all for that, Alex. I'm all for that. I think RJ Barrett can become a guy like that can supplement a number 1 player, a number 2 player. He might even turn out to be a number 1 player. I'm just talking about what I've seen. Right? I'm willing to sign RJ Barrett. I want RJ Barrett to be a part of this team. I'm just not doing it at $36 million. And I think RJ Barrett knows, and he's smart enough to know if he looks around his draft class and everything like that, RJ Barrett is not worth $36 million. I don't think Tyler Hero is going to get that money. I don't think Jordan Poole's going to get that money. I don't think John Morant's going to get it, right? He made all NBA. Zion Williamson, I think he made all NBA. He's going to get that money. RJ Barrett's not worth. He's not on that tier. He's not on that level. Now, I want to keep him around, but he's not at that level. I'm sorry.
The only guy that you mentioned that has proven more than RJ Barrett in the NBA so far is John Morant. The rest of them have not proved that they are better than RJ Barrett. I mean, Zion, we love him and we think he's going to be a star, and I think he's going to be a Knick one day for sure. And that's for real. But he hasn't been on the floor. He's played 83 games, 85 games, whatever it is, and he was incredible in those games. But what he hasn't played. How can you say he's worth it more than RJ Barrett? He's been on the floor. He's barely missed any games. He's missed
because when he was on the floor, he was all NBA.
Yeah, but whatever. You know what I'm saying?
That's what I'm saying. He was all NBA. He was one of the top 15 players in the league.
Right. He's incredible, but he hasn't played.
I think he was all NBA, but I know he was an all-star.
All rookie, maybe all rookie.
Right.
You probably think
right.
Whatever it was.
Yes.
But it's just RJ Barrett's better than Tyler Herro. He's better than Jordan Poole. He's better than these players. Like, so it's just, how do you not just keep your guy? Just prove
to me how RJ Barrett is better than Tyler Herro. I'm not going to argue, but I want to hear this argument from you. I'm not going to argue against it. I just want to hear this. How is RJ Barrett better than Tyler Herro right now?
Who did RJ Barrett score 47 on?
Miami.
And who was guarding him?
He wasn't guarding the whole game, Alex. Come
what
on
are you
now.
talking about? He was pointing out. You had the ball, and he was pointing out. All the fans in the comments can agree with me right now and tell me, if you're a Knicks fan, you were watching that game, you saw him. He was dribbling out, looking for the switch to get Herro to guard him. And he was crushing him. And the only reason why he didn't put up like 55 was because he missed like 7 or 8 free throws.
Okay, game 1 of the NBA Finals tonight, if Marcus Smart scores some buckets on Steph Curry, you're going to pay Marcus Smart more than Steph Curry? Come on now.
Thing. That's not the same thing.
I know it's not the same thing.
That's not the same thing.
Let me get to some of these comments real quick. The chat is going crazy. Again, thank you everyone for watching and tuning in with us. We really appreciate it. Harlem Girl says, no one is coming here. Are we still waiting on the disgruntled star? It's not about waiting on it's not about waiting on a disgruntled star to come save us. I'm all for the Knicks keeping their guys, but everyone has a price. I'm not paying RJ Barrett $36 million, at least not right now. Give me a full season of productivity where RJ Barrett can sniff an all-star game, and you can say, this is the guy we're going to build our offense around and have him go out and win some games for us, and then I'll reconsider that. But as of right now, I cannot guarantee he's going to be that guy. So to me, $36 million is a high number. I want to keep him, but not just at $36 million. Dope Soul Sports Talk said, we can sign him as a restricted free agent so we won't lose him. Let him go out and get a deal. Okay, I don't know if she's talking about RJ or –
yeah, probably RJ. Yeah, because they become restricted first, and then whatever.
Yeah, restricted for 2 seasons, and then yep. You said Josh is spitting facts. Thank you, appreciate it. Darius Garland. I didn't even mention Darius Garland. He's another one, right? You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying RJ Barrett is flat out not better than Garland, Hero, Jordan Poole, or those guys, but I think between Zion and Ja, I think there's a gap there, and I think RJ Barrett's in that next tier.
Yeah, I forgot about Garland. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yep. Darius Garland. Joseph Chavez, we need to stick with our young guns. He has a higher ceiling than Randall. I mean, listen, there's no one. I'm not even talking about Randall right now. Everyone's and this is what I'm saying, Alex, about the Randall versus RJ thing. If you somehow don't want to give RJ Barrett the max thing, you want to keep Randall. That's not the case at all. I think we can have this conversation to be a little bit more fluid and objective without hyperbole, and that's what I don't like. Alex is wearing Knick color glasses, orange and blue skies as always.
No, not a homer. Follow me on Twitter and you'll see that. I'm not a homer. I'm actually a guy that's always told to be that I'm the hater. I'm the guy who's always too negative. So you right. Me too. Yes. Everyone in the chat knows that. So we got 2 haters right here sitting in front of you, ladies and gentlemen, right. Talking about the Knicks. All right, let me get one more comment and then I'm gonna give a take that I have or that I gave 2 years ago that people must have forgot, but I'm gonna talk about it a little bit. Mark Cuban's a clown. All right. Enough of that. So, shout out to T-Book too. That was a good comment too.
Yeah. So, Alex, you talked about Mitch, right? You talked about Mitchell Robinson and his pending free agency, right? And now a lot of Knicks fans are going to get mad at the front office because they're like, well, you could have traded him. You could have got something back for him. But 2 years ago, I said the same thing, and I got destroyed by a lot of these fans that are watching right now. Josh always wants to trade the young players. He always doesn't want to give the young players a chance and all this and that. But, ladies and gentlemen, and Alex, I want you to take a look at this clip from 2 years ago right here on the MBK Network in which I was a caller. I wasn't even, a panelist, and I didn't have the controversy. I wasn't as, stunning as I am now. I was just a lonely caller. Yeah. And I just was a caller, and I called in, and I had a very unpopular take. Check this out.
And I'm glad that you guys brought this up because I think if the Knicks want LaMelo Ball bad enough, they will trade Mitchell Robinson. It's perfect. It makes perfect sense. Golden State needs a big. They need a shot blocker. We have that. Now, the perfect trade that I think that will work out for both sides, I would package Mitchell Robinson, number 27, and next year's number 1, and then probably an expiring contract like Julius Randle, We'll take the number 2 pick, and we'll take Wiggins. I think that works out for both sides. Now, I understand. I like Mitchell Robinson. He is a cornerstone right now. But in 2 years, there's no guarantee that he's going to want to come back. He can go get paid somewhere else and go on the winning team.
All right, so that was my take from 2 years ago. Literally 2 off seasons ago, I was a caller on MBK. I wasn't a panelist. But for those who didn't hear, I basically said I wanted the Knicks to go up and get LaMelo Ball, right? Mm-hmm. I wanted the Knicks to go up and get him. Now, anytime, Alex, I know you probably know this, but anytime this talk about the Knicks going out to get anybody, the whole season people want to complain and gripe, right? But when it's time to go out and go up and get someone or go after somebody, oh, that player's not that good. We don't need that guy. Who needs him? Well, Knicks are fine. We don't need nobody. We got everything we need right here. You know what I'm saying? It's always that thing.
On one guy, or they get stuck on one guy like Jalen Brunson, where it's like, we got to throw everything at Jalen Brunson. He had a great playoff series.
Well, it's not just that. It goes both ways. But you get what I'm trying to say. There's always a difference of opinion from the season to the off season. Right. Exactly. Yeah. So at the time, I wanted LaMelo Ball. I thought the Knicks needed a point guard. I proposed a trade in which people at the time did not like Julius Randle. This is before the most improved season. I thought we can take on a guy like Wiggins who can play with RJ Barrett. Both of those guys from Toronto gave us a chance to get LaMelo Ball. We would keep the number 8 pick at Obi Toppin. Only thing we would be giving up would be Mitchell Robinson, which fans didn't like because Mitchell Robinson was a cornerstone, right? We'll be giving up next year's first round pick the next season. So that turned out to be, I think, Grimes. Grimes would have been the trade. You know what I'm saying? I think we had 2 first round picks. Yeah, we had 2 first round picks. So we still would have kept one.
Yeah,
we still would have kept one.
For no reason. Yeah, to the Hornets. Yep. It was such a stupid trade. But anyway, go ahead.
Right. So we'll give up that one. We'll give up 27 from that year. And then give up Julius Randle, who was an expiring contract at the time, right? So the Warriors can get their books in order. I thought they wasn't going to go anywhere with Wiggins. So to me, I thought that was a really good trade. The Knicks could have made that. And a lot of people hated me for that. But now, as you can see, Mitchell Robinson's about to leave, supposedly.
We hope
supposedly, and we're going to get rid of him for nothing. So just give me your thoughts on Mitch real quick. Why do you want to keep Mitch around so bad?
Because I'm getting it. I admit it might be PTSD. It really might be. But he's Marcus Camby 2.0. And getting rid of Marcus Camby because he was injured for about a year and a half, and trading him plus Nene, which was the pick. Everybody Knicks fan knows the story from McDyess, and then McDyess blows out his knee, and then the Knicks are looking for a center for 10 years until they get Tyson Chandler. They have Eddie Curry's and Jerome Jameses and all these people coming through. So that's where I feel Mitchell Robinson. The same point I made about RJ Barrett. If Mitchell Robinson never becomes a superstar, an all-star, whatever, the highest ceiling possible for him, he's still going to be a very, very good defensive setter that is already top 10 in blocks, total blocks in the season. I mean, I think it was 7 or 6 this year, and he plays like 20 minutes a game, 25 minutes a game. So why would you get rid of a guy like that who came out of college, who didn't even go to college? He was completely raw, didn't play. He was working out in gyms, and you see his high school games that he wasn't playing AAU ball. He's playing against guys like me. You know what I'm saying? And like this guy didn't have a chance to develop, and he's finally here. He's getting a future, random coaches here and there, and blah, blah, blah. So I want to keep him because I don't want to lose him and see him go somewhere else, win Defensive Player of the Year, lead the league in blocks like Marcus Camby did with Denver. And I don't want to see that just to do it. Just keep him. Don't trade him just to trade him. You're telling me that there is a trade out there for a superstar and you have to include Mitch? Thanks for the memories, man. Like, thanks for the dunks. They were great. But if you're telling me that you want to just get rid of him just because you don't want to keep him, then that's just stupid.
Well, I don't think that's the case, though. I don't think the Knicks are getting rid of Mitch just to get rid of him. I don't think that's the case at all. I think this is a contract situation, right? The Knicks want to see what the market is. Want to see what the market is for Mitchell Robinson, and they're going to act accordingly, right? But again, this is another one of those conversations: is how much are you paying Mitchell Robinson? Like, to me, 9 points a game or less than that or whatever it was, it's not going to cut it. I think our center needs to be a little bit more versatile. I think Mitch, he's a really good defender, right? His fouling, his poise has improved tremendously. That's improvement. That's development. People want to talk about the Knicks not developing their guys. That's development. He used to foul out a lot. Now you don't see that as much, right? He's able to go up, contest shots without fouling. I think that's really important. But offensively, there's no versatility there. And I feel like it's a liability to have someone like that on the floor, particularly when you're not knocking down outside shots. All you do is settle for outside shots. The Knicks were last in the NBA in points per game in the paint last season. The year before that, they were 25th, right? And I think a lot of that is because of that clog that Mitchell Robinson has there on the offensive side of the ball. All he does is rebound offensively and put back, right? Which is good. That's a good thing to have, but that tells me that your team is missing shots and they're not getting effective offense. So I think the Knicks can do better at the center position. I would love to bring him back, but I think if we do bring him back, regardless of whether we bring him back or not, we need to have a guy that can go out there and stretch the floor a little bit, give this offense a little bit more versatility, because right now, being last in points in the paint in the NBA is not a good thing, particularly when you don't have guys that can knock down outside shots.
Well, Mitchell, to expand on that, I think you'll see Mitchell Robinson take a step and Obi Toppin take a step if the Knicks can get a regular point guard in here. That's not Alec Burks. Because those guys, so much of their game is their athleticism and just jumping out of the gym. So if you're going to have somebody who can lob to you, like somebody like what happened with DeAndre Jordan in with the Clippers when he had Chris Paul. Obviously, they're not going to get a Chris Paul in his prime. But I'm saying he got a point guard. He looked like an all-star. You know, Chris Paul made David West look like an all-star, and Tyson Chandler looked like an all. You know what I'm saying? I know Chandler was all-star with the Knicks too, but whatever. You get a guy in here that's, you know, even on a Schroeder level, even just a little better than that, somebody who can run an offense and throw the lob. You'll see Mitchell Robinson take a step from whatever points he had per game, was it around 10 to another 15. You know what I'm saying? Not another to 15. And then same with Obi Toppin. And that's why you get rid of Randall, because Randall just clogs the ball and ball dominates and ISOs and then chucks up shots and pouts. You know what I mean? You don't need a guy like that on the team. You need somebody who's going to come in and let the offense flow.
So let me ask you a question. I'm going to get to this comment real quick, but I'm going to ask you a question right along with what you said. Katie the Rapper says Mitchell does the same thing as Gobert, if not better. Here's the difference between Mitchell and Gobert. On Utah, you got guys who can knock down the three ball. The Utah has been tops in the league, one of the best teams in the NBA in three-point shooting over the past couple seasons. So they can get away with having a guy. They can get away with having a guy like Rudy Gobert to clog the paint, right? But as you can tell,
he's a bigger, stronger. Gobert's a stronger guy than Mitch. You know what I mean?
Right. But the prototype of staying in the paint, being able to block shots, playing defense, I think that's what he's talking about. But again, Utah has much better shooters. They have Bogdanovich, Donovan Mitchell, can knock down some shots. Royce O'Neal, they had guys who can knock down the three ball, so it's a little bit different. We don't have those guys, and I feel like based on our roster, I don't think Mitch and Randall fit together at all. Right now, this is where I agree with you. I think Randall and Mitch, Randall and RJ, those pieces kind of don't fit. We need to have someone who can penetrate a little bit better, a little bit more athletic to get to the lane, to open up those alley-oops, to be able to distribute the ball a little bit better. Totally agree with you. But if you're going to make that argument in regards to Mitch and Obi not having a point guard, can't you make the same thing for Randall, who Randall, I feel like, has to dominate the ball a little bit because the Knicks don't have that guy. They don't have that point guard, right? And before you even get to the whole thing about RJ Barrett was second on the team in usage rate, second on the team in shots for the last two seasons. So RJ Barrett does get the ball. He does get the ball his fair share. It's not just completely dominant, though.
Yeah.
Say again?
RJ was the number 2 option. So, yeah, that makes sense. You know what I mean? And he was the number 3 pick in the draft. He's going to play, but Julius Randle is not a guy that's going to distribute. He's not a guy that helps the offense flow. And he's not a guy that can jump out of the gym like an Obi or a Mitch, where if you get a better point guard, it's going to make him better. Obviously, a better point guard will make anybody better, but he's not the kind of guy who needs a point guard to be great. And Julius Randle just needs to be more efficient in order to be great, like he was in his All-Star season, in the gyms. You know what I'm saying? So that's my point.
Okay. Sergio Guanciglia from Italy, question from Italy, says trade up for Ivy is possible. I definitely think that's possible. I think the Knicks are going to consider that option. But if that happens, say goodbye to one of these kids that we got on the team, because there's no way that the Knicks are going to be able to.
Or a future pick, or one of their future picks.
I think it's going to cost a little bit more than that. I think whoever is going to take or get rid of that 4th pick, I think it's Sacramento right now. Yeah. I think they're going to want another young kid to go along with it. It could be Cam Reddish. It could be Deuce McBride. It could be IQ. It could be Obi. So who knows? Let's just see. But I do think, and thank you for the question, Sergio. I think that is definitely possible.
It's a good question. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. And just going along with what we said, man. Listen, I think that the Knicks definitely need a point guard. I think having a point guard definitely answers some of our questions. But I think the problem with the Knicks offense is not just Randall. I think it is having Mitch out there. I think the pieces don't fit, right? And that's why I'm open to moving Randall, because I think if you move Randall, you can kind of open up the offense a little bit more. But again, the coach is Tibbs, right? And Tibbs like his offense run a certain type of way, whether it be no plays, running it through your best players or what have you. And I think that's a little bit of a problem too. So this is where I give Tibbs a lot of the blame for the offense not being that good. But I still think we need a more versatile center. And that's why I'm not it depends on how much money we're keeping Mitch around for, but I'm not all in on just keeping Mitch just to keep him.
Yeah, but that's a big problem that I have with this organization. You're basing your opinions based on a 64-year on the future on a 64-year-old coach who's a stubborn 64-year-old coach that failed in 2 other places. You're going to base your future the next 5, 10 years.
What do you mean failed? What do you mean failed though?
He failed. I mean, he got screwed with Derrick Rose in Chicago. Okay, fair. But he failed in Minnesota. He failed.
Well, wait, what does failure mean though? I'm trying to figure out because everyone has a different definition of failure. To me, the Knicks have failed the last 20 years, right? They failed, right? So what is failure to you? What does that mean?
It's the same thing. He comes in, he changes the environment, the team gets better, they look great, and then all of a sudden they take a nosedive, and then you got to get him out of here. And there's so many stories from Minnesota of him like thinking like the locker room was bugged. Like you can Google it. Like he was like crazy. Like he and then you bring him in here, and you're like, I didn't really want him to begin with, but I was okay with him because I thought he's a real coach. He's not like a Fizdale or a Fisher, where if you get him talent, he can win, which they did the first year. But at the same time, you can't, you just distract me with that comment. But at the same time, you can't base your decisions on this coach. I forgot where I was going with that point, but it's all good. Whatever.
Okay.
I think everybody gets what I'm saying. Oh, I wanted Kenny Atkinson or I wanted Budenholzer 3 or 4 years ago. Also, Knicks fans didn't want him. They were throwing a parade for Fizdale. I think Atkinson would have been a better coach because he's better on their timeline, and I felt like Tibbs was going to rush them and make them do something stupid, which is what happened with the Fournier signing, which would happen with Kemba. You know what I'm saying? They were rushing instead of just being good and growing with a development coach that was right in our backyard that we knew. You bring in this guy who's like the big name, and but I was okay with it because he was a experienced coach that's been around that was in New York as an assistant back in the day too. So.
Gotcha.
We're here, and I think he needs to go because he's a 64-year-old coach, and we got a bunch of young guys, and we want to win in a couple of years, not right now. I want to win now too, but you know what I'm saying.
I got you. Yeah, I'm with you. And there's a lot of stuff you said that I disagree with. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I just want to get to the super chat and ask you one thing, and then we'll go ahead and close it out. But thank you for the super chat, Junie Gyllenhaal. Alex is my guy, but I hate when he does this RJ Mitch thing. I moved them both to go get Ivy. I'm not paying a poor free throw shooter at guard a max contract. I think RJ and Ivy kind of cancel each other out in a way. The Knicks will have to give up more, obviously, in that deal because you're moving from the 11th pick to the fourth pick, so to speak. So I'm not sure if this is the right move to do. But I kind of agree with you, Junie, in a way. I mean, RJ Barrett's a poor free throw shooter, a poor shooter overall, efficiency issues all together. I'm not giving him a max contract either. That's just the way I feel about that.
But what are you if you trade RJ and Mitch for Ivy? What the hell are you? What is your team? Your team is nothing. You just punted on the next 5 years. Now you have to wait you already waited 3 years.
And that's the other part of it.
And now you're going backwards and you have a 64-year-old coach again. And what are you doing? Like, thanks for the compliment, Junie. I appreciate it. But I don't know if Ivy is that Zion or John Morant coming out of the draft. If he was, he'd be the number 1 pick. You know what I mean? Now
here's what I will say. I think Ivy is more box office. I think he has more box office potential than RJ.
He's a point guard. Yeah, he's a point guard. That's what.
I think he is more. I think he's more superstar potential than RJ. If you ask me,
you could be. It's possible.
And I think he guys like that. So I think Junie, it's a little bit of an argument.
We should get guys with RJ, not get guys like. Get guys that can play with RJ to develop with RJ, not get rid of RJ to get another rookie that we got to wait 3 years to see if he's even good. You know what I mean?
And that's the other part of it. Other part of it. Alex, all right, one last question, and then we'll go ahead and close it out. I know we're approaching our time limit here, but we were talking recently about James Dolan and what the Rangers are doing right now. Obviously, big Game 1 victory yesterday. Let's go Rangers, go Blue Shirts. 6-2 win last night. And we were talking, the conversation came up about, I think you tweeted this, that a lot of Knicks fans, or a lot of fans don't want to give James Dolan credit for what the Rangers are doing right now. However, they're willing to criticize him for what happened 15 years ago. Clarify what you meant by those comments, and I have a quick retort that I disagree with. Go ahead.
James Dolan, he was not a good owner. Let me get that out there. I'm not like James Dolan stan here, okay? But it's been a long time since James Dolan has done anything that was so out of the ordinary that you're like, get this guy the hell out of here. It's just a perception thing where the last thing that you can really say that he did wrong, where you're like, what are you doing, was when he held on to Phil Jackson for too long. He let him draft Ntilikina, and then you fired him. that's the last thing you're like, what the hell are you doing? At least just hold on to it for the rest of the year. Like, what's happening here? So that was the last time really. And before that, we were throwing a parade for Phil Jackson. We were giving him a standing ovation at the Garden when they hired him. So we were all for that hiring. So it's just, if he's not graded on a proper scale, and maybe some of that is his fault and he deserves some of that. But at the same time, if you didn't know who James Dolan was and you just looked at the record and at the things that he's done over the last couple of years, what's so wrong with the Knicks? The Knicks are in a good position. They got a lot of young talent. They were 10 games over 500 in the 4 seed 2 years ago. They have some good players. You can't on one hand compliment the players that the Knicks have and think that they're good players and they're going to grow, and then on the other side be like, well, James Dolan sucks. Well, James Dolan is the reason why these guys are here, because he hired people that pick these players. So at the same time, and then the Rangers are perennially good and they're in Eastern Conference Finals and, just crushed it in game 1. And he gets no credit for that. But no matter what happened with Julius Randle, but James Dolan was the guy that was the owner when they traded for Steve Francis and they already had Stephon Marbury and Larry Brown was here and Isaiah Thomas and blah, 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 blah. And yeah, there was terrible like sexual harassment stuff, which I do not defend. I'm just saying that he's not graded on the proper scale, where recently over the last 5-10 years, it hasn't been the bad James Dolan that it was the first 10 years.
Okay. So Alex, I think that's complete nonsense. I just got to tell you, I think that is complete, absolute nonsense. First of all, in regards to the Rangers, right? I didn't like the fact that James Dolan fired Davidson and the other GM that they had and the coach, prior to them doing what they're doing right now, because a lot of these players that the Rangers have right now, those guys drafted. Davidson and all those guys, they drafted them, right? And Dolan fired them. But yet Dolan's going to get credit right now for the team being where they are right now. And okay, fine. If you want to go ahead and use that argument, it's a results-oriented business, right? It's all about results. The Knicks haven't been good in 20 years. We have the worst record in the last 22 years. 22 years.
Huh? They have been good. They were good last year. They were good last year. And with Melo, they were in the playoffs for
22 years of his ownership. The Knicks have had the worst record. You said it yourself. It's a results-oriented business, my friend. The Knicks have been terrible.
The way you're saying it is that they've been bad for 22 straight years, which is not true.
I didn't say that. I said for the majority of it.
And then the second 10 years after Melo, and in the Melo era, there were a lot of trades that happened in that first 10 years from Isaiah Thomas, where the Marbury trade held them up. A couple other trades held them up where they didn't have the draft picks. When Melo was here in his prime, they could have used a young player to sneak him in there, and then they could have taken another step and kept going instead of being in that purgatory, 37-win purgatory they were in towards the end of the Melo era, which held them up. But ever since Phil Jackson, who did not trade any draft picks, the Knicks have been in a good position. And guess who hired Phil Jackson was Dolan. Guess who probably told Phil Jackson, don't trade any draft picks? James Dolan, because he's been the owner. And you can't give him
I don't think he's that smart. I'm not giving him credit for that.
Well, then you're not grading him on a fair scale. You can't give the guy shit for being terrible all the time, but then when good things happen, not give him credit for it. Then you're not grading him on a fair scale, and you're proving my point.
Again, I'm just going off of what you said about it being a results-oriented business. The Knicks have not been good since James Dolan's been.
Should be fired.
I mean, they've had. Okay, so we could go all day with that, right? So they've had ample opportunity. I think, first of all, this is the biggest market, right? The biggest market. You got one of the premier franchises in the NBA, been around since 1946, right? And the team has been this bad. We have no championships over the last 20-something years, and we have one of the highest payrolls for a majority of those 22 years. That is ineptitude. Not to mention, I think we could talk all day about the basketball. We don't know who's really calling the shots. So I guess we do, but there's a lot of red tape in there. You got your president of basketball operations, your GM, your coach, whatever. Off the floor, this guy's been terrible. I mean, off the floor. How do you not honor Marv Albert right after he spent his entire career working for the New York Knicks, but at the same time you want to bring in Isaiah Thomas and then have him go work for the Liberty? Please give me a break.
No.
How do you?
But don't defend Marv Albert. Marv Albert was caught in a hotel room wearing women's underwear, biting girls in the back, and got arrested. You don't remember when he got fired? I'm not defending him. What I am saying is, how can you criticize him for that? Yet you hire someone like Isaiah Thomas, and then the whole thing happened, and then at the same time, after that's done, you hire him to go work for the Liberty, the WNBA. That was
horrible. How do you call fans drunks? Send fans calling them drunks and kicking fans out the arena for expressing their opinion, right? How do you do something like that, right? How do you get into this spat with Charles Oakley? How do you call him a drunk after that entire incident that happened? And the whole Spike Lee thing, he's just been terrible. The PR has been bad. No other owner does stuff like that, and that's one of the reasons why I don't like James Dolan. And this is not even basketball we're talking about. Basketball is a whole nother thing that I can get into. But just all that stuff, I think combined with all of that, I think that's the reason why he has the reputation that he has. And that's the reason why, I'm not a big fan of James Dolan. But hopefully it all improves. Hopefully we get better. I'm glad the Rangers are doing what they're doing. I like the direction of the Knicks right now. Hopefully he can stay out of it. So
the Spike Lee and Oakley stuff, man, I can't give you that, man. Oakley was out of control, and he really was, and he proved that. In the beginning, I was like kind of defending, how is this happening? Why are they carrying him out of the Garden? But then you see he's on every podcast. He's selling a book trashing Patrick Ewing. Forget Oakley, man. He lost his Knicks colors, man. He's out of here, dude. He is out of here. I don't care what he did. You're trashing the franchise. You're trashing Patrick Ewing, who's the man.
Because they've been bad, Alex. What do you want to say? The Knicks have been great the past 22 years.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying be fair. Grade him on a proper scale. He hasn't been the best owner, but he hasn't been the worst owner. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm saying. And you can't Spike Lee throwing a temper tantrum because he didn't go in the right entrance or exit. And he's getting, I'm Spike Lee, okay. And then you lie and say that he didn't even talk to me. And then Dolan tweets out a picture of Dolan and Spike having a conversation on the floor that night. It's just Spike Lee is out of his mind too. And same with Oakley, where they're just trying to promote themselves by trashing the franchise. And then you have Spike Lee going to the Nets.
What does Spike Lee need to promote himself for?
Don't get me down this road, man. Spike Lee cheering for the Nets, having arms in the air, like, yeah, go Nets. Yeah, okay, man, get out of here, dude. Get out of here.
Ladies and gentlemen, I mean, this is my guy, Alex.
Tracy Morgan's our guy. Fat Joe is our guy now. Those are our guys now. Nick
Fat Joe.
Not right. Spike Lee.
Ladies and gentlemen, I mean, this is what we do. On Twitter, we go back and forth all the time. I'm so glad to have you on, Alex. I really appreciate it. Let the people know where they can find you. Let them know a little bit about your podcast and what you guys got going on.
The Fans Podcast. Check the links in the bio or in the description, whatever you want to call it. And we're everywhere. Me and Mike Biseglia, my co-host, formerly of CBS Sports Radio. We, he's the Nets fan. I'm the Knicks fan. We're the only Knicks and Nets podcast. We argue about the Knicks and the Nets. We talk about all sports, but it always comes back to the Knicks and Nets at the core. We've had plenty of famous people on. We've had Richard Jefferson, Kerry Kittles, Chris Childs. We have Tracy McGrady actually booked for tomorrow. We're hopefully having other potential Knicks and Nets down the road that we're talking to them. I don't want to give away to people because it's not really booked, but McGrady is booked. It should be out Monday or Tuesday. Check that the YouTube or Apple or Spotify, follow, subscribe, whatever. Download the episodes, help us out, 5 stars, the whole 9. And find me on Twitter at Knicks Central, where you can see me complaining about the Knicks all the time without the orange and blue glasses. Thank you very much. I am very, very not that way. I am just honest. People think I'm a hater when I disagree with the franchise, and people think I'm a homer when I agree with the franchise. It's just the way and podcasting. But thanks for the comment. I'm just playing. That's all.
Yeah, man. I really appreciate you coming on. Ladies and gentlemen, look in the description of this video. Again, we got the Spotify link, we got the Apple Music link, and we got the YouTube link. They got, again, a lot of phenomenal interviews with a lot of really famous guests, famous NBA guys. Co-host Michael Sagliero, formerly of CBS Sports. Definitely a lot of informative and opinionated posts. You think this is something what we did today? Alex and Mike, they do this all the time. So please go check these guys out. And right there at the ticker at the bottom of the screen, you see that where you can follow Alex on Twitter. If you want to comment about something he said or what I said, or in the comments on this video, please go ahead and comment. I'm definitely going to be checking this out, letting Alex know how wrong he was the entire show, right? So definitely leave those comments in there. Once again, Alex, I really appreciate you coming on, man. We definitely got to do this again in the future. Maybe I get on your show or whatever. We'll work it out. Yeah. Thank you for everyone in the chat tuning in, watching us today. Look forward to that MBK draft party. That's going to be on the 23rd. Please get your tickets. It's going to be a lot of links and stuff like that to go around about getting those tickets for the MBK draft party. Hopefully we get a chance to see you there. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I am gone. Alex and Josh, we're out. Peace.